At CEU, I guess.
Yes.
Not a CEU.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay, we are paying attention. So you're...
can I interrupt the conversation?
We just came here for the wine.
Yeah, I know, but you gotta suffer for your enjoyment. I'm sorry, tonight it's hearing me read. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. Scandalous, I know. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
So, tonight, this is my first collection of dark, weird fiction, black propaganda, though it also came out as an ebook under the name of Blowback. And substantially, there are stories here going back about, some cases, 12 or 15 years at least. The majority, though, were finished within the past few years, and there are plenty more in the works. Got quite a number of stories that I'm working on right now, but this is like the first collection. Have a couple of books of poetry in print as well, but this is the first book of prose that I've published. Now, the stories are predominantly dark, weird, psychological, erotic horror. So, excuse me if this, diminishes the party atmosphere at all. I mean, do you want me to stay off the nasty bits and try and stay on the fun stuff, or what?
They're the ones you have underlined.
All right, anyway, too late. Sorry, here, you've got your wine, that's it. So, then, to kick off with a maybe slightly more approachable one, the story called Master of Darkness. This is a story about a media celebrity in London, modern London, who has been possessed by the god of, the Egyptian god of death and virility. The kind of risk that any modern media personality faces. And basically this is my attempt to do an update of something like an American Werewolf in London. So it's a story of possession and dark goings on in the London streets. This one I think I'm drunk enough to do. This is a stream of consciousness description of the guy who has been possessed by the demon walking into a club, and this is actually, I have to confess, this is something like a rerun of my own mental experience when going into clubs, but here we go. So, what?
We saw that.
So you've seen what goes on the outside. Now you know what goes on the inside. Okay. Here we go. VIP live. Too bad, folks. The queue starts where I stand. In the door. Too many steroids make that earpiece looks like a worm crawling down your lug hole. Now that's more like it. Who needs night vision goggles? Can see just fine, even in shades. That's the beat. Fuck. Mainline in the spine. Pure epidural adrenaline. Here we go. Ball of left foot, ball of right. Heel of left foot, heel of right. Pivot, bring it down, you dicks. The music is so hot. What the fuck are you doing? Crowding floor space, not dancing, gawping, doing nothing. Hiding behind your beers, behind each other, so gutless, ballless, scared to stand out, alone, you're so fucking macho, try it on, yeah. Look at the pair that aren't on you, you crumple at a stare. Okay, ready to lash out, any direction, center of balance, small at the back, in the house of the scorpion, tail, sting. What mansion, the women's room, yeah, you're so fucking hot, baby, come on out here, and show me what you're really made of, get up off the wall. And out of the lineup, who could ever respect a sex that spends so much time waiting to squat and piss? Lay a finger on her, I'll rip your fucking lungs out through your throat. You cunt, my territory. Can't you smell the mark already on her? No wonder, you stinking prick. Out that cab, don't trip, take your heels off, get in the back seat. Where you belong, your place or yours. There, give the cabbie a thrill, frisky bitch, the soft coils of your hair. Out, I'll pay, barefoot up the steps, Lean on me, walk up no roomies, good, real girly room, narrow bed, it'll do to coral you for me. Down you go, down it all comes, get them off. Here I am, no protection, bareback too bad. Not your night to choose. Said you want it hard, feel that could rig a sail on it. For you it'll only stand up and never come down. Proud goddess, you do that to me. Oh, look you, river in Spain, the waters of life and death. Bursting the banks, flood your fresh seed from your fields. Death fertilizes life. Look at you, beauty, flooding back. Good girl, give it up. Nothing else matters. Not who you are, only what you've lain with, what you've had, what's within you. You'll never know. You're touched now. The rest of the book is a little bit more coherent and easy to follow. Not many more sections about clubbing, sorry about that. But then, for again a slightly more approachable one.
I stood too close.
No, it's fine.
I hear better one.
Not at all, and if anybody else wants to go out and try and get another drink, please feel free. This passage is about this is from a story called Firmware, which was one of the first to actually feature in a magazine, and it's about an athlete cyborg. It's actually a woman who is rather like that South African athlete who was fitted with the artificial legs. Pistorius, yeah. And she is basically in a near future athletic league where enhanced athletes compete against each other. In order to support herself as an athlete, she has to get sponsorship to get better quality upgrades, and she also has to basically moonlight as an enhanced courtesan. And the theme of the whole thing is overall the two types of addiction. First of all, surgical addiction, because she has to constantly upgrade herself. And secondly, simply the addiction of competition, being pushed forward and forward to excel, in the course of which she becomes more and more mechanized and eventually ceases to be human, or at least her individuality is being more and more overtaken by both the pressures of competitive sport and the technology and the mechanics that she's been fitted with. So, this is when she is fitted basically with a new set of enhanced limbs. Just 1 second, let me find the page. With her latex outfit on, her hair brushed back and highlighted, and her lips and cheeks painted, she glided into the club's diamond suite to see Costello. He rose to meet her from an office-style low stool beside the chair, wiping his fingers on an anti-static cloth from which he folded neatly and slipped into the breast pocket of his grey suit. "Sika, looking lovely as always," he said gently, taking her artificial hands between his. "The girls took care of you? Well, good. Now I'd like you to sit down for me." Costello dressed with almost pathological neatness, perhaps overcompensating for the common view of his profession. He was no sensualist, Sika knew from personal experience, and was motivated mostly by the money and the chance to push his chosen specialization even further. She had not heard that he had ever been disbarred, but he never called himself doctor. Warily, she approached the object beside him. The chair resembled a fantastic hybrid of a gynae examination chair and a recumbent beetle corpse, cast, for Costello knew his clientele's predilections, in gleaming chrome. Its form, Costello had told her, was patterned after a traditional Chinese courtesan's chair, but its fittings were entirely modern, with ports, sockets, and induction loops recessed into the metal or hidden in its limbs. Sika still feared it, but she also welcomed its embrace. In its clasp, her phantom vanished limbs felt the most sensation they ever could experience. She lowered herself hesitantly into the chair, sliding her arms down its rests, and it contracted around her like a reflex action in the beetle corpse. Lie back with your arms and legs straight, Costello requested. She complied, and chromed restraints slid round her wrists and her ankles and latched into place. Is this really necessary? She asked, pushing a latex-coated wrist against metal. Costello tutted and looked down at her with raised eyebrows. Until I run the first diagnostic subroutines, absolutely. Do you think I want to risk damaging you? She sighed compliantly, and Costello wheeled a small medical monitor unit into position beside the chair on its casted stand. I'm going to take your limbs offline for a minute while the new firmware installs, he explained as he tapped commands on the small touchscreen. It's a new algorithm, next generation. You should feel the difference immediately. No Jackson leads? She asked jokingly, dry-mouthed and empty-stomached. Costello shook his head gravely. It's all done over Bluetooth. The actual package is quite small. Now, ready? She nodded, and he touched an icon. The flow of impulses between the prostheses and her afferent and efferent nerve fibers halted, and she lay there with her limbs inert. It was a moment of helplessness she always hated, trapped there, weighed down by dead metal. It reminded her of the worst aspects of club work, although amputee fetishists, the gimp kinks, made up a mercifully small share of her clientele. Costello registered her distress and squeezed her bare shoulder. Here it comes, he announced, glancing at a progress bar on his monitor. Rebooting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. She strained against the restraints and half rose from the chair, pushing herself up against its arms with hands that were suddenly alive, responsive, reacting spontaneously, feeling the padded armrests. Hitherto, her club legs had transmitted only a vague, dulled sensation, as if swaddled in heavy wet cloth. Now she could feel an electric tingling all the way down to her toes, which, her senses told her, were flexible and separately sensible, and could be bent and pointed again. Wow, she breathed. Makes a difference, doesn't it? Costello smiled with quiet satisfaction. Yeah. Could you release my right arm? Sure, he complied, and the wrist restraint retracted. She lifted her right hand, flexing the effectors in her right arm and weaving the digits before her eyes. This stuff is good. I can feel so much better. It should be. The algorithm works with the neural interface, not the machine end. How is the sensation? Is it comfortable? Do you want a while to process it? Do you need any adjustment? No, she hesitated a moment, worked her fingers some more. Just takes some time getting used to. It's not quite like normal fingers, but it's good. Let's go on. They worked on motor calibration for the next hour until she was fully adjusted to the new pressure differentials and sensory feedback from the tweaked firmware. Her prosthetic firmware had its own encoded body schema, which had to be modified and recalibrated with each upgrade. Costello molded it in three-dimensional graphics on the monitor screen with peripheral gloves. By the end, she was breathing hard and flushed, stirred by the unaccustomed intensity of the sensations. Had her sense of touch really felt like that before the modifications? She couldn't honestly remember anymore. All she knew now was that she had been touching through rubber gloves, as her mind told her, and now she could run her fingertips over cold metal, tacky vinyl, fine linen, and experience every nuance of temperature and texture once again. Costello finally raised his head from the console and thumbed it off. You're all ready now, he announced, standing up. That was well timed. Your first client will be here soon. Would you like me to release you? I'm fine, she replied shyly, not wanting to be disconnected from the chair and lose even a little of the new sensations. It was worth it, wasn't it? Yes, she nodded. You'll make back the price in no time. His palm smoothed her forehead briefly. I'll on the program now. Enjoy. Okay. Thank you. So, next. The next story, called Coma Berenice, is about this is another very near future one, set in Switzerland, and it is about the customer of a very exclusive client of a very exclusive clinic. The clinic is a private medical facility that specializes in putting patients into deep comas and maintaining them in deep comas. It's basically designed for people who, for example, are suffering from a very painful disease and want to live for a long period in the hope that it can be cured, or people whose relatives, for some potentially criminal reasons, have decided that they should go to sleep for a few years or decades, or simply long-term coma patients who have to be maintained in a coma state. And this clinic one day gets a very special celebrity customer with a very special request.
Sort of like cryogenics.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the comparisons. Basically, it is between normal coma maintenance and cryogenics. I'm not sure if such a place really exists, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Sorry, just a second. By the way, how are you with the length? Is it was that last one too long, or was it okay, lengthwise?
I was waiting for the end of the book.
Sorry, I'm not going to. Just one wine only lasts me so far, and I'm not going to read the whole thing for you.
Another one. I didn't get you a straw.
Deal. Okay, so Coma Berenice. I don't want to be there when you do it. That was the one line that stuck most. Sorry, just let me kill the noise, Jesus. Sorry, someone keeps sending me messages on WhatsApp. This is a very modern type of interruption, I know, but let me kill it. Yeah, honestly, this is far more than I've read to before on certain occasions.
Tell you what I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live too far from here, and I could fit 4 in my car, 5 if you get real friendly. We could go over there. I got plenty of wine, got plenty of beer, got everything. We could go over there.
Maybe in a bit. Yeah. It's not a bad idea, definitely.
You're all
Unfortunately, I can't go.
Well, that makes it easier. More in my car. Sorry.
I'm doing you a favor, Jack.
Okay, anyway, sorry, continuing with the story. I don't want to be there when you do it. That was the one line that stuck most in my mind from the whole affair. Not that it was the most unusual, distinctive, or original thing that she said. There was plenty more of that. The gossip columnist could have filled endless pages from her conversations. She practically spoke in sound bites. She'd been on public view for so long that 2 invisible quote marks seemed to hang off each perfectly sculptured, slightly downy temple, framing every sentence. All the same, that was the one turn of phrase that seemed to sum it all up for me. Not that she's exactly in my past now. To know how I got so close to a celeb, a golden girl like Berenice Channing, you have to understand the way that long-term chronic care, or for that matter the whole medical sector, is evolving these days. We're not doctors and nurses anymore. We're security guards on the walls of gated communities, protecting our patrons from physiological or financial incursions. We don't heal the sick. We define and defend a lifestyle. We provide exclusive medical tourism packages whose destinations may include the distant future for cryogenics, or a radically transformed physique or sensorium for body enhancements, life extension, nips and tweaks and tucks of every kind. It's all there if you can afford the entry fee. And outside our walls, well, things aren't so nice. But no one is exactly being deprived of anything. There is trickle-down, spin-off, pro bono, CSR, benefits in kind of all kinds, enough to keep the regulators and the NGOs on side while everything steadily gets more elective and market-driven. We're the icing on the cake. But everybody gets a slice, now and again, or at any rate, a few crumbs. With my bachelor's degree in hospital administration and my decade in the Gulf behind me, I was as much part of the wealth management infrastructure in Zurich as any private banker or horologist. I got to put on my white coat and breast tag whenever I had to impress a client or an inspector or indulge in playing doctor, but my true role was all about providing a discreet, seamless and very expensive service to customers who would take their business away halfway across the world to Houston or Singapore at a moment's notice if they felt even a little unwanted discomfort. The tact and attention to detail mattered far, far more than curative skills, and I was very, very meticulous. Berenice Channing walked into our front office on Limmat Kai unannounced one morning, drawn by our reputation. I'd flatter myself and say it was all down to my hard work. That morning I wasn't in white. As it happens, I was wearing light grey tweed and a waffle piqué shirt from one of the banker's tailors along the Bahnhofstrasse. But the hushed tone of the receptionist's voice over the intercom, her awed gaze as she admitted our guest, told me that I needn't bother to change. Of course I knew who it was. Like most of the half of the world's population that has access to modern media and infocomms along with running water, sanitation and other goodies, I'd been seeing her face and reading her name for over 10 years now. A star on the catwalk and the WTA circuit alike. She'd built herself up to supermodel status even before the tendon injury that brutally cut short her tennis career in her early 20s. Undaunted, she picked up the ball again and ran with it, perpetuating and curating her personal brand, using it to build others, levering off her connections, recreating herself as one of the stars of sports marketing. I could open or pull up the latest issue of Vogue or Forbes any week and find her there, as the Chanel image girl or the latest interviewee on the series on young celebrity CEOs. But she sat down across from me, in the flesh, so nonchalant and deliberately casual in her hipster pants, striped sailor tee, generic tote bag, and deliberately wide Gucci shades pushed up hairband high over auburn locks, slightly disheveled by the breeze across the lake, and I knew that she could buy my whole clinic and everything and everyone in it. Well, excluding our high net worth clientele at least. I'd like a consultation, Mr. Canova, she announced, digesting the name on my desk set without so much as a pause. Yours was recommended to me as the best and most discreet operation in the field. Certainly, Miss Channing, I replied, mesmerized by the gaze of those hazel green eyes, set in slightly tanned skin with a light dusting of freckles across the ridge of the nose between them. That fascination was about all that allowed me to keep any composure. What is it about? A relative? At the time, it was a natural enough assumption. I hadn't caught any hint in the celebrity gossip press of medical problems in Berenice Channing's family, but I assumed that one or other of her blue blood parents back in Boston had hit a personal health crisis. No, it's not, she said. But before I tell you any more, I'd like to ask you to sign this. She reached into her tote bag, pulled out a clear document folder, and slid 2 identical stapled copies of an A4 form from it across the desk at me. It looked like a conventional NDA, but the letterhead was one of the most renowned law firms in Switzerland, a name that would set our own legal advisors trembling. I scanned through the top copy, then stopped when I reached the clause about indemnities. This exposes us to unlimited liability, I commented. I need to ask our lawyers to look it over. Well, if there's no infringement, there won't be a problem, will there? She rejoined nonchalantly. I'm sorry, but I really must ask you to sign now. Clearly she was ready to walk if I didn't sign. Not liking to think how I was going to explain this to the board, I picked up the showpiece lacquer signing fountain pen and scrawled along the dotted line on both copies. She took the forms back, adding her own autograph and the date, and slipped her copy away, satisfied. This concerns myself, Mr. Canaver, she continued, leaning forward with her elbows resting on her beautifully chiseled knees. I want to make arrangements to enter long-term care for an indefinite period, financed by my estate and on terms overseen by my executors. I don't require any special guarantees or assurances beyond what you normally give your clients. And you'd be well paid, I promise you. You can deal with me as you would any other client. Almost. Miss Channing, I'm not sure what I mean, I said carefully, projecting mild puzzlement, while underneath my mind was racing. You don't appear to be ill. Are you expecting to lapse into a coma in the near future? We can run some tests if you like a second opinion. We have an excellent diagnostic suite. Mr. Canaver, please, she sighed, betraying a hint of impatience. We both know that your clinic has facilities both not only to sustain patients through a persistent vegetative state, but also to induce one. That's why I came here. I want you to do that with me. That is the more sensitive, lucrative area of our business, the one we don't advertise, for the Christopher Reeves of this world, for the chronically sick, the crippled or paralyzed, who don't want to endure the pain or the misery and degradation of their condition, and yet still hope for a cure someday. We offer the chance to sleep through the intervening period and wake up cured. We're on the borderline between the regular coma patients and the true believers in cryogenesis, the trust fund Lazaruses. As a matter of course, in such conditions, some clients do die in our care, which is one reason why we don't advertise this service and only rely on referrals. Then there are also the more ambiguous cases, the mental patients in the care of relatives, the born-again Christian who believes that rapture is coming and wants to skip Armageddon, the people who need for legal and other reasons to disappear for a while. We don't ask questions, so long as the power of attorney is in order and the consent forms have been signed. So, I reached down to the lower drawer of my desk, the one with a biometric scanner cued to my thumbprint, unlocked it and pulled out one of the brochures we keep for these rare occasions. This provides a brief introduction to our service and our facilities, including a cost breakdown and a sample form of agreement, I explained, focusing on the technicalities in an effort to retain some control over the situation. But for our clinic's sake, I must ask what this is for. Think Robin Cook, she murmured softly, confidingly, almost teasingly. Think Kill Bill. Or, if you've heard of it, think of the Japanese writer Kawabata and his House of the Sleeping Beauties. You know. It took me a few minutes. Then I let my mouth hang open and just sat there, an unabashed fool. You're not serious. I stuttered finally. Mr. Canova, I wouldn't waste your valuable time on a joke, she reproved, seeming a little amused all the same. I promise you I really am serious. Then why? I gasped out, really having trouble with my breathing. I don't know why. Perhaps her unbelievable composure as she sat there discussing this inconceivable thing. It's private, she responded, partly to herself, glancing into her lap for a moment with that dreadfully self-satisfied expression I'd seen up until then only on the faces of expectant mothers. If you need therapy, we can recommend someone very discreet. We have the best connections. We do. Many of the clients need counseling before induction, and their relatives after. Plus, as a matter of course, we have to weed out a few crackpots and obsessive. Oh, I've had therapy, she shrugged. Still here. But you must realize, Miss Channing, we couldn't possibly consider this. I blustered as she contemplated me, mouth slightly open, probing the inside of her lower lip with the tip of her very pink tongue. You could, she insisted, sotto voce. I know you could. But it's unethical. The moral and reputational hazard it would expose us to. She stretched and glanced away, almost yawning. Mr. Canova, I appreciate that you did your duty and said what you had to say. Now, why don't we just cut the crap? That brought me round like a rap across the knuckles with a school ruler. How long? I asked, dry-mouthed, once I'd thought of what to say. Indefinite, like I say, open-ended. My attorneys will handle the arrangements. How much? She wrinkled the bridge of her perfect nose, tore off a corner of the consent form that I'd given her, and scribbled a figure on it with a desk biro, then passed it across to me. I read the number, then slipped the scrap into my breast pocket. And the publicity? And the visitors? My attorneys will handle all the arrangements, Mr. Canova, she repeated, definitely teasing this time, upper lip very slightly curled, face and expression glowing with that banked down, tawny luster. I'll have to consult with my board, I finished, for I did have to. Don't worry, I expected you would. She gathered herself up and rose from the chair. I'm staying at the Idorolnak. Just ask for the company booking. I can see myself out. I watched her taut, achingly well-defined buttocks bob under her cotton pants as she left through the main suite door. As a matter of course, all executive-level workstations on our office network have access to the clinic's CCTV system, and I punched into the reception monitor feed to see a bodyguard, crudely typecast in dark suit and glasses, rise from the foyer sofa to take up his escort position at her shoulder. Once they had left the building, I sat down to the keyboard and waited 20 minutes for my hands to stop shaking. Then I wrote an email to my board. Is it clear to everybody what exactly it is that's going on there?
Yep. I guess so.
Should I read through the section that goes into a little bit more, well, basically when she comes out with her own explanation of things?
Sure.
You mentioned Yasunari Kawabata.
Yeah.
It sort of is a little twist off of one of his, by the way, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Yeah.
And one of his called the House of the Sleeping Beauty.
Exactly, that's the one. Because I had an ex-girlfriend who was into this when I was in Hong Kong.
Good man.
Although not to this level of medical,
Very good. Very good. I love it.
but all the same, anyway. It should be obvious that Berenice Channing is both very glamorous and very rich, and completely sort of self-sustained, independent. Eventually, in the story, she does become a sleeping beauty of a sort. However, she also effectively is like a sleeping vampire, because the anonymous, clinic manager, who is the protagonist of the story, becomes obsessed with her, as in fact she had calculated on all the time, and she gains a faithful servant who will basically watch over her for decades while she sleeps through this experience, obsession, whatever it is.
What a great premise.
Well, that's like I say, you can thank one of my ex-girlfriends. So, after that, I didn't really, this is skipping over quite a bit of detail, by the way, to a later point in the story. After that, I didn't really have an opportunity to talk to her again until just prior to her admission. Her lawyers and our lawyers were arguing the finer points of her committal documents, the living will that was to govern her treatment in our care. Berenice didn't seem especially interested or engaged in that stage of the proceedings. I guess it was too abstract to do much for her. But a problem had arisen in the proceedings. For cases of voluntary self-committal, we normally required an independent psychologist's report on the mental condition of the would-be patient. Berenice Channing's team wanted us to accept a written report from her own psychiatrist, but our attorneys and the insurers balked. So while the lawyers faced off across the conference table in our boardroom, I sat with her in an upstairs office lobby and learned the answers I realized I had been aching to hear. I always had this fantasy, even as a child, she explained, tilting a wireframe chair back to teeter on its rear legs and stare into the air at nothing in particular. Maybe I got fixated on Sleeping Beauty or something, I don't know. Anyway, I dreamed of being ravished by the prince in my sleep. When I was a girl, it was just about being carried off, but when I hit puberty, the fantasies got much more explicit. She giggled. It took a while to connect that up with reality, but then one night I had a very bleary, drunken session with a boyfriend, and then the next morning thought, why not? Famous last words, no shit. In that grey, raw, concrete space, forced into the shell of the period facade, she glowed like an autumn bonfire of green branches. So I persuaded him to rape me in my sleep. Of course, the first couple of times I woke up while he was doing it. Sure, it was a turn on, but not as much as when he was finally able to take me while I slept through the whole thing. But how could it turn you on if you were asleep? I objected, reasonably and fatuously. I knew what had happened, and I knew what was coming, she answered, voice soft and reflective. I could feel it. It was electric. My skin was on fire, and I was dripping all day. We tried it with and without drugs. Both were good, but the best was when I could wake up stretched and soiled after a night of natural sleep. That was amazing. Even now, I have no idea why Berenice Channing chose that moment and that setting to be so intimate with me. Perhaps she needed a confessor figure to get it all out before she went under. Perhaps she wanted to tease me with her kink, to implicate me and to make me complicit. But I do wonder if maybe she needed me to understand, to know the why of it, since I was going to be responsible for the how. Even someone with an ego the size of hers needed to be just a little bit understood and accepted. Anyway, after that, I went into it as far as I could. Chose my partners well, joined special online dating sites, anonymously of course, took what time I could out from training and then from work. Yes, I had to be careful, but no more than anyone else in my position. I made my lovers sign the most ferocious NDA you've ever seen. They wouldn't even think of going near Hello Magazine with the story. I didn't allow it to get in the way of work. Like any dependency, you can manage it, so long as you control it rather than letting it control you. Until eventually I decided I'd done enough with my life and came here. She darted a single coy glance at me like a kid wanting to see the effect its story had had on the grown-ups. So what is it? A form of sexsomnia? I probed. I can see you've been reading up on the terminology, she rejoined. I flushed. I had. It's not an arousal disorder, she continued. It's not fucking in my sleep. I'm passive during. It's perversion, not parasomnia. But if that's so, then even more, you won't experience anything, I pressed. You might just remember something we don't know, it's not predictable, and even then, we're not talking about anything like locked-in syndrome, even if that was what you wanted, and I guess it's not. I finished with that lame conclusion, feeling helpless. Why did I care? It wasn't professional responsibility. Normally, with any usual client, I would take their money and assume that the issue of informed consent had been covered. I haven't exposed my own feelings to any one of them like that in years. But Berenice Channing got to me that way. I suppose it's the same sort of impulse that makes ordinary people open up and bare their souls on TV to celebrity chat show hosts. This feeling that because you know something about these people, they are somehow intimate with you. And I don't think that the board would have thanked me at this point for pleading with her not to go through with it. But it just came out spontaneously. I've had all the lectures, thank you, she responded slowly and patiently, as though she was humoring me. I know what you're going to say. Why throw away your life for something you can't experience, right? Something like that. Well, it's my life and it's my choice. And I might experience something on some level. You know that. Either way, I'm willing to take that chance. It's my thing and I don't expect you to understand it. But you might at least respect it. After all, I'm paying you enough. I'm also going to have overall responsibility for you once you come under our care, I pointed out nicely. Would you rather I just took the money and ran? What you do is your business. After all, I'm not going to be in a position to stop you, am I? She locked eyes with me, and I read a challenge there, and something else as well. Looking back, I think I could have said more. She was right. It was her choice. But I also felt that I was really getting through to her. I don't know if I could have changed her mind. She might just have thanked me for my concern and dismissed me. And I was no doctor, had signed no Hippocratic oath. I couldn't figure out why I was trying to persuade her against her own wishes and the clinic's best interests to think again. But at that moment, one of the lawyers stepped out to announce that they had a tentative solution and drew her aside for a hushed consultation. I stepped into the conference room to grill our legal team, and by the time I'd finished, we were both surrounded by others and the moment had passed. Berenice Channing thanked me nicely, went back to her hotel, and I sat in my office staring at nothing for an hour.
Why?
Yeah, it sucks you in.
Well,
Now I'm going to know why it is.
try going through it. That's all I'll say.
Very nice.
And on that front, there's one other equally personal one in here, but prior to going into that, maybe just one quickie that is a bit more essay-like, but short. Would that be good then?
Yeah.
Never anything wrong with a quickie.
Do you have to go?
It's a
That's
good
it.
one. I will listen to.
This one, I promise, is very quick. It's just like one page.
Oh,
And then after that, some slightly longer stuff. This is called the Mutations of Fame. And this is what fame and celebrity, this is another sort of stream of consciousness thing about what fame and celebrity does to you. So, the mutations of fame. Fame causes mutations. We've all seen it, the way celebrities become monstrosities, grotesques, whatever unique characteristic or feature they had to mark them out from the crowd in the first place and start them on their yellow dung brick road to stardom, hypertrophied, exaggerated beyond self-caricature, grown into a deformity, an eyesore. And it's obvious there must be a causal relation. The pattern is so prevalent, it can't all be cosmetic surgery and prostheses. Something is forcing it, driving the famous towards some horrible consummation, a collision with their public image, crammed down into the mold until it breaks the facial bones to fit like a foot-binder slipper. What is it that exerts that immense distorting force? Surely the audience. Perception perverts reality, and the pressure of so many acts of perception, so much quantum interference between competing observer states, triggers random, spontaneous mutations in living tissue, collapses the way it functions again and again on vulnerable genetic material, saturating reality to a level it has never experienced on this earth. As men's immense overbreeding and a monocrop of humanity from horizon to horizon fractures the environment, so their millions of eyes, coordinated and converging on their object of desire, warp the fabric of space and time with a barrage of perception at the sensitive molecular level among reactions already occurring below the quantum threshold, erode and distort the information content of DNA, scramble the transmission, upset replication and repair, provoke random runaway errors, causing the flesh to change, to flow and liquefy away from its ground state to seek new identities unconstrained by fitness, health, viability. Fame causes cancer. Fame creates runaway tumors, starting with the skin, and in women the breasts, fruit of desire, wherever eager eyes like to feast, and in both sexes in the groin where sperm and eggs ferment, pass on their errors to the next generation. What the eyes feast on metastasizes. Sick icons, the memes, seared into the flesh by the branding gaze, so many markers, spread under the skin, rewriting the ACGT base pair sequence into code readable by eager scanners. Studio lights are mutagens. Hello Magazine features a malignant carcinomas as virulent as those disfiguring the faces of Tasmanian devils. And of course the famous are mutants, no longer human. Celebs are freaks as over-specialized as the Argus pheasant, stuck in the Darwinian cul-de-sac that selects absolute unfitness. Cancer arises as a distortion of the normal information flow, an interrupt in the transcription mechanism, a monopolization of the cellular dialogue, a crowding aside of other messages, a blocking of regular channels. What else is fame? A clot in the even circulation of meaning and value, a glitch in dissemination. Runaway replication, eruptive tumors, tumescent, the carcinogenesis of modern media. Every time you browse a gossip column or channel surf to a reality TV show, you are exposed to a clastogen as lethal and contaminating as plutonium. If everyone is famous for 15 minutes, then everyone has cancer. Perhaps this is how media is changing the world, mutating the whole species, infecting us with the diseases of affluence, the same pathogenesis instantaneous beyond epidemiology. If you want to live whole and long, live invisible and dim. I know I'm completely contradicting my own what I say with that, but what the hell.
What have you got famous, dude?
Yeah, no, whatever. So we're close to, I think the official finish time is 8 o'clock anyway, so it's 10 to 8 now, so maybe just one more. Sound good?
Drink to that.
Yeah. If you have to go then.
No, I will wait. They can wait.
You hold your breath.
This is again much closer to real life. This is based on a relationship that I had with a girl back in Singapore about 16 years ago. And although the names and some of the details of the situation have been changed to protect the guilty, otherwise. By the way, just so you know that I'm not taking too many liberties, she actually edited the whole text. She went through it and, suggested changes, etc., read it, made some notes on the punctuation, this kind of thing. So I'm not sort of, doing it without her knowledge or anything. Okay, where to start? The title is The Princess and the Dragon. And it comes with an epigraph from William Goldman, who was a famous novelist and screenwriter. He was the one who wrote Marathon Man, back in, I think, the 60s or early 70s. Dustin Hoffman, Laurence Olivier, very tight, successful thriller. Also wrote this wonderful fantasy novel, which later became a great film, called The Princess Bride. And he wrote, I think, one line in The Princess Bride was, "Who can know when his world is going to change?" Which is pretty much what happened to me back in 1999. Black. Black is the colour of my true love's heart. Her hair is black, long and glossy with such a sheen that it dazzles. And her pupils are black, so deep, and at times when I stare into them, so wondrously void and empty, twin bottomless wells of nothingness to drown in. Black surrounds us when we meet, friendly, sheltering black, radiant with moon and neon, Vaughan's night. The night has 1,000 eyes, lies, spies, wise, sighs, thighs. We live invisible in each other, but not dim. We shine with black light, radiant black bodies. Black, the word has graved itself a long home in my mouth. Comforting black, soothing folds and intoxicating black felt velvet that wrap around my love and I. I call her my princess. Princesses were always the exemplary sacrifices of the fairy tales. I don't know why, probably the old equation of divinity and kingship made them the ideal regenerative sacrificial victims. Anyway, in the stories, it was always princesses who were being locked away in a tower, or sold to a beast, or cast into an enchanted trance for 1,000 years, or chained to a stake for the dragon. And sure enough, she calls me her dragon. Such disguises have a twofold significance in the underworld that my princess and I inhabit. First, of course, they conceal. Society's prejudices drives us to hide, to dissemble, to wear masks for fear of exposure. Or so the rationale goes. Real cases to substantiate and justify our fears are so few. Urban legends, the kind they hear secondhand, but never first. So no one actually tests the extent or depth of the prejudice, but simply takes it on trust, one of the givens of our state. This rush to accept the need for secrecy may also stem from the second purpose of our guises. They dramatize. We don the mask theatrically. We adopt a character. We wear a persona perhaps far more thrilling and inspiring than our mundane selves. It appeals to the real fantasists among us, the sad fucks who are lost without a mask to hide behind. That aspect repels me. I long ago determined to transform my reality rather than to retreat into some pitiful kingdom of the imagination, and I succeeded. But I have to admit that I won my princess partly through the thaumaturgy of the mask. She claims there is a third purpose to the masks. They reveal. The mask is the true face, freed by anonymity from the need to hide, to compromise, to adopt a character imposed from outside. We have no say in who we are, but we choose our masks. That choice is free, an autonomous act, and what we choose defines us. But she has other funny ideas, like her argument that 90% of all women are naturally submissive, and she agrees with some of mine that control is only complicity and that a master is simply a facilitator. Our arguments are just hours of cut and thrust. She even bought me a dragon coat from a quality China import store on Upper Cross Street. I love it and I wear it whenever we meet. Of course it's grotesque, a ludicrous Bruce Lee confection in black water silk with the dragon motif emblazoned on the back. I wouldn't be seen dead in it by day. But it's one of the releases of our situation to have restraints of good taste lifted from us, as so many others. And since my princess is a jade princess, a dragon lady, it suits her blood. And since the dragon is St. George's emblem, it suits mine. The dragon holds in his mouth the pearl, the symbolic spur. Seed pearl, the seed I sow in her furrows nightly. The pearls she takes straight down her throat in long ropes without pausing for breath. She usually arrives back at the apartment at around 7. She works all hours, so we get together when she has an evening free, and we don't go out much. She needs something totally different from restaurants and nightlife to really disengage. We do that in our own space. The apartment block overlooks the south bank of the Singapore River, west of Clemenceau Road. With no obvious current, the river drags its murk under the clean bridges with their racing traffic that are visible from the river, from the windows as far as Raffles Landing. From the 15th floor, the signs of Clark Quay and the beacons of the towers around Raffles Place shimmer when night comes down. The few times I see this view by day, I can hardly relate it to the evening view at all. At night it is a permanent firework display, by day it's oblique and seemingly almost unpeopled. In any case, since we usually spend the few weekends she has free out of the country, I don't get much chance to see it in the daylight. But I like that view. Put a man in a tall building, especially one with floor-to-ceiling windows, and he feels he's God. I can look down and observe the people about their tasks like some colonial administrator 100 years ago, overseeing the doings of the native populace. Mostly, though, I spend my time watching television and waiting for her. The block has a vast scarlet paper lantern in its atrium, and I imagine her walking in under it on the way to the lift, the phoenixes and immortals hovering over her head like a giant version of the ridiculous bridal hats from a traditional Chinese wedding. The lift slides up the shaft as she rises towards me in her silver-mirrored palanquin, brought to me by obedient machinery. Then the latch clicks and she comes in, drops her bag by the door and waits there for me. I go to her and push her jacket off her shoulders, then open her top. She wears the coins suspended on threads round her nipples, which I tied on her this morning. The round coins with the holes punched through the center are perfect for her, and the ideal weight, just enough to keep up the pressure without cutting off the blood flow. These are antique coins, quite unlike the round, flimsy Singaporean 10-cent and 1-cent pieces. And since she is so thoroughly modern and westernized, I enjoy pushing her back down her bloodline, to the times and places when girls like her were sold from the villages. She stands there motionless while I remove them, presenting her breasts for my attention. Her skirt slips down her smooth legs, then her panties, on the days when I allow her to wear them. I tug her head back by her ponytail, watching her eyes close and her lips open, and kiss her slender neck as it bends. Usually I leave her hair clipped till last, so her hair can fall down already around her naked shoulders, the last constraints of the outside world coming off. I muss the locks against her skin, feeling the crispness slide against it. There she stands in the glow filtering in through the windows. A tropical tan and her own natural tint have given her an almost caramel skin tone, and she seems to soak the dark into herself, softening her flesh even further. I run my her fingertips over her, feeling the static charge build in the air. There is this strange layer in her skin. I don't know how to account for it, like a woven electric element just under the surface which radiates heat. She sighs, eyes half closed. Then I seize a long nipple and start to squeeze, watching her bite her lip as the pressure increases, till I squash the resilient bulb between thumb and forefinger. I grab her hair and yank her head back, pulling her down to the floor. Her eyes roll back under her lips as she under the lids, her lips open, as she crumples like an unstrung puppet. Once she is down on her knees, I slap her forehand, backhand, once, twice. Her head snaps back and forth, then lolls loose, and I shove an open hand between her legs and start ramming her cunt and anus with a 3-2 grip. Nothing in her slim build suggests that she can open that far, but she swallows my fingers as she quivers like a greyhound. She gasps and clenches round me. Enough for tonight.
Very sure.
Any questions?
Well, no, I think you answered all the questions.
Next time with the slides.
It's always the quiet ones, aren't they?
You know, I'm not familiar with British writers, mostly, but to me, a lot of your background thoughts remind me of some of the things by Poe.
Poe is a big influence, actually. You know, Poe is
A lot of
for one thing, Edgar Allan Poe is not only basically the real father of the modern horror story, but he is also the most fantastically economical short story writer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the guy who really does not waste a single word. You don't, you know, no sentence repeats what's in the previous sentence. They always move on to something else, and every time is terrific. So, you know, certainly Poe is an inspiration, definitely.
And we consider him a Baltimorean.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I actually, the one reason I didn't go and see the Poe Museum in Baltimore was because it was in such a dangerous area. Except I did go and see the Poe House in the Bronx.
Oh, okay.
So I basically took the New York subway up to, you know, whatever it is, station up in the Bronx, where they still have this beautiful white clapboard little house in the middle of a small park, in the middle of the Bronx.
Okay, so
No bullet holes in the walls.
the home of Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, love New York, by the way. Love to go back there.
Very good.
So how did it go exactly? We have no say in who we are, but we choose our masks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of the detail around that is around the dominance and submission subculture, which basically operates online a lot, and where a lot of people use, you know, false personas to hide their identity from the outside world. And as a matter of fact, that was precisely what was going on back in that period with my ex and me. So, hence, you know, the details about that. That was actually the story of all the ones that I've written, that was probably the one where I struggled most with rewriting it and rewrote the least. you know. There was a lot of there that sort of seemed to be asking to be rewritten, but when I sat down to it, looked at it, couldn't do it. And it's also the only one that is actually, despite the fact that it's in there, it's not horror. But it is weird. Nothing particularly weird happens in it, except the relationship itself, which for some reason, for some people is weird enough in the prose, but otherwise it's pretty cool. No science fiction, no supernatural occurrences, no like strange dimensional, you know, rifts.
How long was the relationship for?
Oh, it's very, the relationship was very short. As a matter of fact, it was almost measured in days. But she's still a good friend now, 16 years later. So, gotta say something. Can we take you up on that invitation?